11 minutes
What did I do?
at 11 p.m. on July 31st, 2020 in Newport Richey.
Being placed on arrest.
For what, sir?
They're 11 minutes that Marlowe Jones says should have never happened.
For me?
Yeah, sir.
Me?
Yeah.
And he says it took him 2 years to get that time back. But to understand how,
it's a small town.
we sat down with Jones and his attorney, Kevin Rossendino.
In July of 2020, we were peacefully protesting when we were attacked by a drunk man that came out of a bar.
This video of that fight was first released to ABC Action News by the Newport Richey Police Department in August of 2020. In it, you see former officer Nicholas Richey rush over to pull that man and demonstrator Stephanie Hinkle apart, and Jones runs over as well.
I witnessed this drunken man laying a hit on Mrs. Hinkle. And at that point, I stepped in between the two and I tried to separate them.
More officers and people begin crowding in, and Jones says he and Richey spoke briefly.
Bench, what do we got here?
Police body camera footage from another vantage point shows Jones talking to officers. And eventually, that scene is cleared.
The gentleman got arrested. Miss Hinkle, they talked to her, got her statement. She went home with her family that night, yeah.
But exactly a week later, Jones says Hinkle's family called to say she was missing.
We said we'll go file a missing persons report.
Which brings us back to those 11 minutes.
You cooperate and we'll get along great.
Ma'am.
I didn't understand what was going on. I was there just to file a missing persons report. Then they're telling me I'm being arrested.
Over the course of the video, you hear Jones ask why he's being arrested several times.
Can I please be told what I'm being arrested for?
I already told you, sir.
And officers answer that he's being charged with felony battery on a police officer.
When?
Then, at 3.5 minutes in, you hear another officer say this off camera.
We had you on video last week pushing one of our officers during that altercation.
I pushed an officer?
Yes.
The problem is, body camera footage from that night doesn't show that happening.
Somebody help!
Marlowe, come on, man.
Dude!
Yeah, it was shocking to hear her say that. At that point, I knew something wasn't right.
After a 2-year legal battle on May 5th, 2022, a jury acquitted Jones on charges of battery on a law enforcement officer and for resisting arrest.
It felt like justice because I felt like the jury and the judge got it right.
And now, in 2023, Jones says he's pursuing further justice by filing a civil lawsuit in federal court. The 43-page complaint names the city of Newport Richey, its manager, the mayor, the former police chief, a current police officer, and 2 former officers, including Nicholas Richey, who claimed that Jones pushed him back in 2020.
Those are the people. Those are the people that had everything to do with why Marlowe had to go through what he went through.
The suit claims that the charges brought against Jones can be tied to a history of racism and lack of police training in the city. It claims that history has been upheld by current and former city leaders and current and former city officers. And it also says that Jones was falsely arrested, wrongfully prosecuted, and subjected to emotional distress throughout the process of this case. The document also includes examples connected to each claim, such as this text exchange between the city manager, Debbie Manns, and city councilman Jeff Starkey from the day the verdict was delivered in Jones's trial. It's an exchange that we verified to be real through a records request from the city of Newport Richey. In the text, the pair talk about the case and how it wasn't looking good for the city. And they go on to say that Jones was no saint. At one point, Councilman Starkey says that Jones would never let the city live this down, and that the verdict would empower Jones. To which Manns replied, "I know, not happy." Since the suit was filed in March, attorneys for the mayor, Richey, and the city itself have filed 3 separate motions to have this case dismissed. They all assert that Jones's complaint doesn't have any legs. And one motion includes this excerpt, claiming that the suit is largely redundant, immaterial, impertinent, and comprised of casually unrelated, scandalous, and harassing allegations. But in spite of this, the case still appears to be moving forward through federal court.
I want the people that are in power in the city of Newport Richey to be held accountable, because if we don't hold them accountable, then nobody else will.
And Rossendino tells us they're seeking several $1 million in damages, which will give that accountability some teeth.
Really, when you talk about civil rights, it's really a punishment, right? For a city like Newport Richey, $1 million might be a punishment, but $5 million really is a punishment. So we wanted to maximize the amount of the punishment to the city.
And it's a push that the pair plan to take all the way to a jury.
Never going to stop fighting. The only time I'll stop is when my heart stops.